You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. And if you have missed any of the show and you want to catch up, you know what to do. Download the podcast from the Following On feed, now available via the free talkSPORT app or wherever you get your podcasts. Right, as promised at the top of the show, we're joined live by Durham head coach Ryan Campbell, great friend of the show. But I'm not going to ask you what your aims for the season are because you're going to win the championship and the Blast at least, aren't you?
Oh, at least that's what everyone's trying to do. But yeah, mate, the facts are that there's a real air of expectancy around the place, and I think we've added to our squad nicely with a couple of signings in the off season. And I've said probably all morning at our media day, it's the feeling about the place because obviously the women's team is here for the first time ever, and ever since they walked in the door in November, there's been this just a great feel about the place. So yeah, we're all very excited to get going.
Campbell, I seen you a couple of nights ago at the Hall of Fame dinner, and I heard you talk, and you said about just the little bits of difference to take us from fifth when we first come up into the Division One last year, to get us from fifth to winning the championship. Are these the little differences? The Connors with a ball and Gig and the experience of Will Rose. Durham you've recruited very, very well, but not young players, some experienced players as well.
Yeah, well, firstly, Harmy, I love it when you say we.
I
Let's be
always say
honest,
we.
we're Durham. Yeah, look, the honest truth is that, when we decided about, signing new players, firstly, they've got to have great character. That's something that we, pride ourselves here at Durham. And then I guess it was the skill set of what those guys brought to the table. And, the experience under pressure is going to be really important for us. And we felt that Will Rhodes especially brought that. And then the other one, Emilio Gay, I think, is the most exciting talent going around. I know everyone's talking about who's going to open the batting for England, and how his name's not being talked about, it's got me. But look, he's going to bring a wealth of runs, and he scores under all sorts of conditions. So, we're excited with what he brings. And, the obvious one, we know that Potts, Cass, Wood, Stokes probably aren't going to play a lot for us. So we needed to, find more depth in our fast bowling. And that's nothing against our youngsters, because I think you know me by now, Harmy. We're going to play all our youngsters whenever we can, but we got to make sure we play them at the right times. We can't just throw them to the slaughter. And I'm very careful about, the James Mintos, the Daniel Hogue, Luke Robinson. These youngsters we have to look after. We can't just break them. So, yeah, a couple of experienced bodies around them was really important. And, hopefully we've got the balance right.
Cambo, 3-1 here. Harmy and I were in India a month or so ago and chatting to Graham Swan, who, of course, was on the Lions tour with Ben McKinney. And he said he thought that Ben was good enough to play for England now. So your thoughts about him? And also, do the ECB still give you directions about how much you can or should play the likes of Potts and Cass, and how much will we see of Ben Stokes in the beginning of the championship?
That's always the most interesting and fun meeting of the year when I get pulled in and tell me what the bowlers can and can't do. Considering we've got a pretty good track record of producing fast bowlers for England, but to be fair, like, those conversations are important because we need to know what their thought process is around Cass and Potts and Stokes and all that sort of stuff. And we don't want to go beating our head against the wall, but the one thing I always say, and Neil Colleen, and the bowling coach for England, obviously is an ex-Durham player, so we get on really well. But the thing is, I don't want them to shy away from playing county cricket just for Test cricket, because that's not so much unfair on us, but it's unfair on the player, because I don't know any fast bowler in the history of the game who gets better by bowling to a mitt. And I'm sorry, that's me being maybe a bit old school, but I've watched Mark Wood be put in cotton wool and being looked after, and he's an exceptional talent. But I wonder, if he does need to play more cricket, just to get him a bit more hardy. I know that Bryden Cass is another one, but Matthew Potts especially. Man, he's a guy that needs to bowl. He needs to be. He doesn't get better just by bowling in the net. So, those guys are very important. I would have thought Ben Stokes won't play for us. That's my gut feel. That he's coming back from a pretty serious injury, and with 11 Test matches in the next 9 months, so to speak, 10 months. That's a big workload for him. So I would have thought they'd be taking care of that. As for Ben McKinney, look, I love young talent. I've always said that, and I'm going to give him every opportunity to prosper at the top of our order. The facts are, though, he's still a young boy learning his game. And now, if I was a selector, obviously I'd be putting his name forward. But, I just think about it. If I put a little bit of common sense to it, which generally doesn't go with me very often, but, I'm thinking India and Australia are the best teams in the world. Maybe getting him involved in the squad but not playing him, maybe for those 10 tests, might be a good thing as well, just to get him to learn about it, maybe take him on the Ashes tour, have him in the squads, but maybe just keep him away. And again, that might sound a bit negative, and I'm not that sort of guy, but, by doing that, he might understand the game and then play him against the rest, so to speak, and then you're probably going to get maybe a 10-year opening batter. So he's still got a lot to learn, don't get me wrong, but his powers of what he can do are very, very exciting. And let him just learn the game a little bit more. He's just not quite there yet. But we know with the England how they are today that they do throw caution to the wind sometimes. So it wouldn't surprise me if he gets picked.
Yeah, I'm old school, and I must admit I've been called with no common sense either. When I talk about bowlers having to bowl more, and obviously you get bowling hardened when you actually bowl overs as opposed to not bowling overs. And I agree, the McKinney one. When you look at England's track record, Campbell, I've seen so many kids, and you've probably seen it in Australia. So many kids finish their careers at 22 when they're being thrown in when possibly they shouldn't have against the very, very best. And then by the time they're 25, that's when they're they're sort of at their peak of their powers. So I agree with the sort of the McKinney one. There is a large clamour because probably the only place in England I think it is at the top of the order where there's a possible chance if Crawley or if Pope doesn't score any runs. But what about talking about old school? What about the argument? All them championship matches first 6 weeks of the season. I know we don't really want to get into the 100 taking the whole of August, but that is a difficult period, and the championship can be won. It can definitely be lost, but you could get in a good position to win the championship in that first 6 weeks of the season with all the games coming up.
Yeah, 100%. It's non-stop. It's obviously, I think we've got 7 games in 8 weeks. So, you need to have your bowling in particular in order to make sure that you can get your rotations right and you get up and running. And, the focus on those games are going to be extreme. We know that we need to get off to a good start where, again, you can't control the weather, but that's part of it as well if you get some good draws. But, look, at the end of the day, if we have a bad 2 months, then you're suddenly scrambling and, you're trying to protect you don't want to get relegated and all this. And it's funny how once you start thinking and looking in the rear vision mirror, how poorly your team can go. So, mate, I think everyone knows me quite well by now. We're going to throw caution to the wind, especially in these first few games, and really set the tone of how we're going to play the game. We're not. I'm not dishing baseball because I like the excitement of it all, but we're not that probably extreme. But we probably score faster than any other team in the land, and we do that because we know that to win games we need to take 20 wickets, and to take 20 wickets takes time. So, yeah, our batters are going to go for it. We're going to try and score as fast as we can, and then we're going to find a way to take 20 wickets, which is going to be the tough stuff.
Campbell, you're right in the thick of county cricket now, and you know your way around it. But given your background, you still have an objective dispassionate look at the structure of it. So, any particular thoughts about the current structure of the season? And also, do you also get the impression, I think you do, that the Championship is not necessarily now the place to perform in order to move on to higher honours? Does your face fit kind of thing?
Yeah, well, that's one thing that I'll always say that Rob Key and his crew have to be a bit careful of. You can't just throw your foundation stone out into the wind, because every great player that's ever played for England, every great player that's ever played for Australia, they all come from the same comp. They come from the county championship or the Sheffield Shield. So you have to protect that. As for the structure of it all, again, I do get a bit frustrated with how it goes. I am not a 100 hater, because I think it's saved England cricket when it comes to, we've seen the money that it's brought in. So you'll never get me talking against it. But I think we need to find a way. And again, it might mean 2 county championship games going. But if you did that, maybe you could then start the season with one-day cricket just for a couple of weeks. And therefore, then you work your way into the red ball season. You avoid the real dodgy weather at those first couple of weeks, and maybe that's the way to do it. But again, there's people smarter and wiser than me who get paid a lot more than me that are going to come up with those decisions. But the one thing I will say, and this is coming from an Aussie who's moved to England and who loves the game, I've always loved the county game. We have to protect it. It is an absolute jewel in our crown. So whatever those decisions are made, it has to be the priority, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Paul Fabres echoes that as well. He talked about 12 championship games, and I'm of the generation that played the Benson and Hedges, the one-day cup, more or less before the season starts. And I look out, I was at the ground this morning. I'm looking behind you, blue skies. It was freezing this morning, I must admit. But I mean, the weather's been very, very good. And knowing the obviously Chester Street as I do, the wickets at the start of the year aren't normally too bad. They're normally sort of quite good when the weather's been good. So I think you're right. I think one-day cricket now played on the sort of fresh pitches, I actually don't think there'd be the little green seamers that everybody's worried about. So I echo what you're saying and what Paul Fabres is saying. But just a final one from me, Campbell. Over the winter, I mean, you must be proud. You've been at Durham for a while now, long enough to see the likes of Stokes and Potts and Carson, Wood, Beddingham play for South Africa, Ollie Robinson being brought into the squad. You've got some good young players, McKinney and Lions 100. How proud are you, representing that club with them players playing international cricket and potentially more to come?
Yeah, 100%, mate. My kids are starting to grow up here. That I feel like I'm part of the Northeast, and our job. And again, I'm not having a crack at any other counties because I never run your own team how you want. But I think some teams sometimes forget that one of our main jobs is to produce England players, and I take that very seriously. I think John Windows, who and our academy staff have been unbelievable at producing, bowlers and batters and just players in general coming through our academy. And, we'll always stay thick to that, and we always believe in it. I had another 17-year-old bowling for Durham against the Durham University this week, who I believe is another one who's got a really bright future. And I think the one thing that you can be guaranteed of is that we're going to give our youngsters a chance. We will play them, and I think that people can see that our pathway is strong, but there's also a pathway that you can see how you're going to play for Durham. You know how it is. If you follow the steps, we will open our arms and give you those opportunities. So we'll continue to do that. The silverware and all that, don't get me wrong, that's what we also want. It's not just about, great, we've produced another England player, but mate, I think the time is here that Durham is going to be an absolute force to be reckoned with, and hopefully by the end of the year, everyone's talking about us.
Ryan Campbell, thank you so much indeed, Durham head coach. Very, very best of luck for the season, and good luck staying warm too.
Thanks, guys.
And also joining us from Durham Media Day is Ollie Robinson, the Durham Ollie Robinson. Ollie, you spent the winter with England, or part of it anyway. Presumably that gave you a very, very strong taste to want more and more of that in the future, more involvement and actually some more playing time.
Yeah, 100%. It was honestly, it was one of the most surreal experiences I've had in terms of getting the call and then and yeah, obviously flying out and then spending time with those lads and kind of getting a taste for the environment and seeing kind of how much they do and how hard they train and how they work. And like it's that the attention to detail for me was beyond belief. The way Brookie batted in the nets, the way Rooty batted in the nets, it really like, opened my eyes to how kind of the top lads train.
And Ollie, was that? I mean, you've been quite successful at Durham, in the recent past, and that's why you've been selected. But I'm saying you've sort of bat in the top 6 for Durham. Is that something that you want to keep going? Because I look at Durham's side now, and they've signed 2 or 3 batters that coming in. The balance of the side, probably you're the all rounder. There's a couple of bowlers who can bat a bit. But are you pushing at Ryan Campbell saying I need to still bat in the top 6?
Yeah, definitely. I think Campbell is pretty keen for that to continue. I think I've always kind of seen myself as a batter, and like at Kent it was tricky when I was at 7 or 8 or whatever where I batted there. Just kind of feel like you can't score your big hundreds, you can't score your big runs because you end up batting with the tail and then fielders go out and you can't really play your shots. But I think, and obviously if I was to go up a level, then obviously you kind of revert back to that. But I think at that level, if you look at that lineup, there's not that many people in that England team that can't bat, and actually everyone's treated as a proper batter. But yeah, no, I love batting at 5 and 6. I think it gives me a real opportunity to kind of do what I've done and actually be a batter, I guess.
Ollie, I'm fascinated, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners and viewers will be fascinated as well about you're talking about the training styles, techniques of the top players. I'm fascinated by that. Over the years, I guess the one thing that I've noticed that the top players do is they net with the same intensity. They somehow manage to bat in a net with the same intensity and focus that they do in the middle. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's not always about the length of time that they bat for. It's the quality of that. It's the actually let's treat this like it is a game. And I think that's a lot of it goes down to the coaches as well, actually creating that environment and actually having that facilities and having it available to actually have high quality practice. And I think hats off to people that throw balls for hours on end and kind of provide that for people. And yeah, it really was just like the attention to detail and what they wanted out of every session. Like there'd be some days where we wouldn't play an attacking shot, or they'd literally just work on defending the ball. Or when O'Rourke was bowling around the wicket at people would practice literally just facing bumpers for the whole session. And I think it's that, isn't it? It's understanding your competition and what you're up against. I think it's tricky, I guess, in county cricket because you obviously play a team and then you play another team the next week. But obviously in a series, people start to work out how they get you out. If you've got out twice the same way in the first test and then you end up playing the second one, they're going to keep doing the same thing. So actually it's finding that way to combat it quickly in between like a game, I guess.
And you obviously come back from New Zealand. How's the winter gone? You've gone. Did you went to Zimbabwe, didn't you?
I went to Zimbabwe.
You were part of the trip that went to Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Nice to be back outside again because there's a big distance between the leaving New Zealand and the time difference between now and then and starting the season.
Yeah, definitely. I went to Dubai as well. I was in the ILT 20 for 5 games.
How was that?
It was good. It was my first taste of kind of overseas franchise cricket. So it's something that I've never really been a part of. So actually seeing, especially in the IL as well, where you got what 10 overseas players, I guess. So actually your competition for places and the quality of that competition is remarkable. But no, I enjoyed it. I would have liked to have done better and kind of played a bit more. But I guess that's what it is. I guess when you're first starting into those kind of competitions, you're competing with the best in the world. So I think you've got to kind of take it with a pinch of salt and actually not be naive to think you should be playing all the time. But yeah, just got back from Zimbabwe, which is a good trip. Obviously, it's very different in terms of the weather and the facilities over there, but
That's a
but
chest history.
yeah, a little bit different. But no, it was a good trip. We got a lot out of it. We played Zimbabwe A actually in this well, in both games, but the second game we played on a lesser ground against a better attack was actually a real challenge. Probably close to their test attack. So that was a good challenge. I guess obviously with first test against Zimbabwe this year, you get a look at what they can offer, and actually in England they could be a bit of a handful. Obviously with Blessing, 6'9" or whatever he is, he could be quite tasty. But yeah, I think you've also got to take it as a little bit of the humane aspect of it as well. You go to these countries where obviously their facilities and what they've got available isn't as good as what we've got, and I think it really does make you appreciate a lot more what you've got here, and the facilities that we get week in, week out, that they don't have. And actually, yes, I think you get a sense of like real life as well.
It's Blessing Muzarabani you're talking about there. Ollie, I'm curious, you're only 26, but I reckon this is your 8th or 9th season, perhaps, as a pro. That makes you a senior? Do you feel like a senior pro? I mean, you're surrounded by internationals, but you're a senior player now, aren't you?
Yeah, I feel like I felt it at Kent as well. I captained the first 3 games of 1 year. And I think at Kent we kind of had a younger group as well. But I think that it comes from playing club cricket at a young age. I think if you're kind of playing with older people and adults, and I guess learning off adults from a young age, you always feel like you're a little bit more mature. I think that's the beauty of actually not going to a private school sometimes, is that you get the opportunity to play in adult teams from a young age. But no, I've kind of always seen myself as a leader in some regards, not always as a captain, but definitely as someone that I feel like I've played a lot of cricket now, and I can actually help some people. And I think when we split up into teams in football in the mornings and we play young versus old, and actually getting on the old side now, it's a bit of a slippery slope from there, I think.
I know what you mean about playing adult teams and about school. I just didn't go to school. But hey, what an exciting potential 9 months that you have. Have you had one thought on, are you anybody spoke to you, next cab off the rank? Do you go, Kesey or Luke Wright or Brendan McCullum, even close to being Stokesy and saying, well, if something happens to Jamie Smith, you could not only be pushing for the title, because I expect Durham to push for the title, you could potentially be thrown into a test series against India, and also be thrust into an Ashes series, 7 months away, 6 months away. I mean, that's a pretty busy schedule, but it sounds like a really exciting one.
Yeah, no, 100%. It'd be exciting. I've got no idea what plans are going forward. I think you can just do what you do. I think you kind of just do what I've done and try and replicate what I've done the last couple of years and try and go one better. But yeah, I'm pretty relaxed. Obviously, I'd love to be a part of all that stuff, but I think if you just keep your feet where you are, and next game up against Nottingham for Durham. So I think if we just keep kind of taking it week by week and see what we do, because I think last year I probably got a little bit knocked back by the whole test stuff. Not that I didn't think I should have played, but I feel like I really pushed my case last year. And I think it derailed me a little bit towards the back end. I think with the blast and the 100 as well, I just lost my rhythm. I think I scored best part of 800 runs from the first half of the season, and then got about 130 off that. But no, I think that's a massive work on for me in terms of that, trying to maintain that consistency throughout. And yeah, I think if I can do that and more, then yeah, I'd like to think my name's there or thereabouts. But you never know what's going to happen. Someone might go out and score 2,000 runs this year and keep like a wizard. But yeah, I'm see what happens, I think.
But was the reward, the reward of going to New Zealand a little bit of the doubt that you had off the back of not being selected, and the disappointment was the reward of going to New Zealand thinking, right, I'm actually not far away here. I could make my debut for England very, very soon, if something.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you don't really believe it until you're kind of there, I guess. And yeah, like, it was completely out of the blue that call. I didn't go in the first place. And then to get that call, it was a bit of panic, I guess. Am I ready to go away? I haven't really done that much cricket before this. So obviously in October November you don't do too much cricket. I kind of didn't have it on my radar. So I kind of, I guess you panic a bit and you try and think if you're ready, and then you get there and then you kind of just embrace yourself in the environment and just kind of get involved and it's given me a real taste for wanting that one step further, I guess.
Ollie, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Another season averaging 60, I think, will do you. You know what you know what it's like. You've done it before.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that. If it's October now and we're averaging 60, I'll be pretty happy.
I think if it's October now and you're averaging 60, I think you've just booked a place on an Ashes trip there. And we're speaking to you again, wishing you all the very best for that trip down under.
Amazing.
Good on you, Ollie. Very best of luck for the season. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. No worries.